I gave Glasgow Rangers and Celtic football clubs a 100-year transfer ban. Can they survive using youth intake players only? Well, let's skip 5 years and see what's going on. Celtic are easily champions, Rangers dropping down to 3rd, but they seem to have the best player statistics with Ryan Kent and Morelos scoring most of the league goals. The Cinch Premiership is in 12th place in league reputation, and Celtic have won 4 out of 5 league titles so far, with Rangers pinching one in the middle. Unsurprisingly, Postecoglou is still in charge of Celtic. And they've done well, only selling one first-team player for a lot of money to PSG for 21 million. Rangers, however, have a different Dutch manager in charge, and it's the current Ajax manager, Alfred Schreuder. He's actually been in charge for a while as well, as Van Bronckhorst left in the first season, and Alfred has only won 1 league and 1 cup. Connor Goldson is the only big transfer out, which was in the first season as well for Rangers. And they do, however, have the best regen so far in this 18-year-old goalkeeper, Unsworth, so we'll keep an eye on him and see if he sticks around. Both teams were knocked out of the Scottish Cup this season in the quarterfinals, weirdly enough, which Hibs won in a different Scottish derby against Hearts, 1-0 with this 85th minute goal. So is this the site of an early decline? If we go another 5 years into the future, we're going to see more players leaving and possibly more teams dropping off. Well, 10 seasons in and Celtic are still on top, winning the Premiership. Hibernian are 2nd and Rangers are down in 6th, but it does look like they have won a cup. The league itself have moved up into 9th place from 12th, surprisingly, and Hibs have won a league title. Celtic weren't even in the top 3 of that season either, but it's the first time the Scottish League was won outside of Celtic and Rangers since Aberdeen in the 1980s, which is absolutely mental. Postecoglou is still in charge of Celtic as well, but David Healy is now in charge of Rangers. He's been there 2.5 seasons with just the 1 Scottish Cup win. That was a 2-1 win against Motherwell. Morelos still here scores a penalty. Motherwell equalised, but from a corner, Ewins was there at the back post to score the winner. Despite dropping off, they have done really well to keep hold of their players, this £7 million departure being the biggest of the last 5 years. And Unsworth is still here and now their #1 goalie too. Postecoglou, however, 8 league wins and 11 trophies, including a Europa League. Now, I did not expect a European trophy in this video. A 3-2 win in extra time against Leicester, hilariously at the Ibrox Stadium as well. 2 goals from their best player Bradley Edwards too, who looks a very talented number 10. 10 years later then, and things have got a lot worse for one of the clubs. Hibs are champions once again. Celtic are down in 4th position, and Rangers are no longer here. Hibs have actually won every single season since the 10 years. And Celtic have been relegated themselves, however, 18 seasons in. They did pop up back as champions above Rangers, who are actually on their way back, however, finishing champions this season. And they have a regen manager in charge at the minute. This is his first season at the club. We've actually had many managers since, including Herman Hreidarsson and Wout Weghorst. Unsworth is still here and looking good. It seems for Celtic, however, that the championship was the only trophy since Postecoglou left in 2036, which is definitely not what they'll be used to. And it seems like they were rinsed of players a few seasons back, totaling £23 million. Including a fantastic striker to Manchester United who's scoring a lot of goals for Scotland already. As well as selling this little beauty to Manchester United the season they were relegated for £25 million on his own. Speaking of Scotland, they are 34th right now in the world rankings with Stephen Glass as their manager. And they managed to get themselves to the 2nd round, losing on penalties and another time in extra time in the last 2 World Cups to Ukraine and Peru. Also reaching the same stage in the Euros the season prior. Let's take a big step now. 20 years into the future, 40 years in total. Quite impressively, both clubs are here, albeit Rangers being relegated from the Premiership and Celtic only finishing in 8th. And this is just based on youth intake players only, remember. The league has been dominated by Hibs mainly, as well as Aberdeen, and even Falkirk there getting a cheeky little win, which is actually their only Premiership win ever. Nice one, Falkirk. Celtic have only won a Challenge Cup and a second division title since the last 20 years. And they've been just hovering around the Premiership for quite some time, really. Rangers, however, have won 2 second division titles and 2 Challenge Cups. But they have spent a lot more time in the Championship than Celtic have, around 59% of the season since, which is about the same number of people who haven't subscribed yet. Rangers have also done quite well holding on to players, only selling a maximum of £7 million in one season, including this incredible right back to Aberdeen recently with obscene physical attributes. Scotland are at the peak of 12th in the world rankings right now. But remember, they are the only league loaded, and that does have some kind of effect. They have got to the quarter-final and most recently finished 4th in the World Cup, losing to Germany in a 3rd place playoff. Even more devastating to you Scots is that they've just lost the Euros final to Spain in the 93rd minute of extra time as well. But at least it wasn't penalties, I guess. Let's fire at the time machine for another 30 years. The year is 2091, and we are 70 seasons in, and both Rangers and Celtic are not in the top division of Scotland, which has just been won by Motherwell. And neither of the transfer banned clubs have finished in the top 3 for the last 30 years either. Celtic, despite having the top scorer of the league, find themselves relegated from the Championship this season, but there's still no Rangers. And next season will only be the second time they find themselves this far down after one appearance in 86-87, when they bounced straight back up. They pretty much have been a mainstay in the Championship for the last 30 years. Rangers, on the other hand, are in League One. They did stumble down to League 2 in 2038 and spent 2 seasons down there before settling in mid-table of League 1 for the last 6 years or so. They do still occasionally sell a player for big money, like this £8 million deal to Motherwell, and he is now the #1 goalkeeper for both Dortmund and Portugal with 57 caps. Speaking of international football, Scotland are now 3rd in the world rankings, by the way. Again, they are the only league loaded in the database. And they have reached a World Cup final, losing to Denmark. However, you have been European champions twice, beating Spain in 2068 and Portugal in 2088, which is one more European championship than England have. However, they have won 3 more World Cups. Right then, let's go another 30 years, 100 in total, and see what has happened to Rangers and Celtic. Welcome to 21-21, and Aberdeen are Scottish champions. And they have dominated the last 30 years too. They have now won 7 Champions Leagues and 47 Scottish Premierships with an 88,000-seater stadium. But surprisingly, Celtic still hold the record for the most Premiership wins in total with 60. Rangers are 4 behind on 56, by the way. But the record holders still find themselves scrapping for relegation in the 3rd tier of Scottish football, 100 years since they were last able to make a transfer signing. They also have a new stadium too, by the way, built in 2102. But League One is as low as they have dropped for the last 30 years, so fair play to them. Rangers, however, are bottom of League 2, the 4th tier of Scottish football. And despite still playing at Ibrox, they have dropped attendances to around 20,000 per game, which is still easily the highest average in the league. It's actually worse than I thought, as they've spent a season in the Highland Lowland leagues and finished 10th on multiple occasions. And I think the reason why they weren't relegated, if I'm correct, is that they have a relegation playoff, which they seem to have won on many occasions, which is obviously a positive. But again, correct me if I'm wrong. Now, before you go, as Lewis Capaldi would say, we are going to check Scotland and see how they've done in the last 30 years, but also I've gone a little bit further than the 100 years because I'm intrigued to see whether once they can start making signings again, whether they can build their reputation back up and get themselves back to the top. Scotland are ranked 6th in the world at the minute and have not added any major trophies in the last 30 years, unless you count the Nations League, which I don't. The closest they came was a final loss to England in the Euros in 2100. Now, as I mentioned, I went a little further ahead. Celtic haven't signed any players for 100 years, and their first chance they spend in total 450k. And their first actual signing in over 100 years was Shea Ritchie. Not exactly earth-shattering. Their most expensive player was Devine for 250k. Rangers spent a whopping 71k, with Duncan Sibaya being their first signing for 100 years. So I went forward 9 seasons in total before I realised that things are probably permanently damaged. Aberdeen are still dominating Scottish football, winning their 56th league title, and no sign of both clubs in question. And that's because Celtic, who are my only realistic hope at this point, have once again been relegated down to the 3rd tier, while Rangers were relegated down to the 4th tier. And that's the effects of not being able to sign anybody for 100 years. Why don't you check out this video where I try and break Lionel Messi's 2012 goal scoring record, and thank you very much for watching.